Hello everyone, my name is Gary Paramanathan. I'm the outreach manager at Afters, and so today I'm hosting the Film Festival Forum for Screen New South Wales. Thank you so much for joining us. I would like to begin this morning by acknowledging and paying my respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered today. For me, it is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who may be joining us today. I would also like to acknowledge the ongoing struggle of the First Nations people and Black people across the globe and extend my solidarity to support their ongoing struggle with systematic racism. I'm so glad you're joining us today for the Film Festival Forum webinar. Before we get started, I want to go through some housekeeping stuff. There's a few things, so I hope you're able to pay attention to that. And while I do that, I invite you all to type in comments in the comment box. Some of you have already started, just letting us know who you are, where you're from, and maybe the last great film that you saw at a film festival, because often, at film festivals is when we get to see some really amazing screen content that we don't always get to see, on all other platforms. So yeah, type away and start the conversation. And so yeah, here are the housekeeping rules. Just read them out. So the webinar has live captioning provided by AI Media. To access it, you will see a link below the video that says click here for live captioning, so you should click that. The webinar is being recorded and will be available for playback at any time once it's over. You can access the playback through the same link that got you to this live event. Crowdcast is best viewed through the Chrome browser, so if you're having some trouble seeing or hearing me, hopefully you can see and hear me. If many of you can't see or hear me, just put it in the chat. I'm hoping it's not an issue. But yeah, try the Google Chrome broadcast, the app to see if it works. The chat function is available for you to connect with each other, and Amelia and Danny from Screen New South Wales are in there as well. So they'll be in there providing handy links and kind of sharing any other additional information we're not able to share in this conversation. I won't be monitoring the chat as much, but if you'd like to ask us a question, there is a separate box at the bottom of the screen you'll see called Ask a Question. So just type in your question into that box, and I'll be checking that throughout the conversation, and we'll be responding as we go where it's possible. And if you see a question that you want to ask that's already been written, or if you see a question that you really like, there's a vote function, so you can vote for the questions that you like. That also helps me decide what's the most sort of pertinent, most important question to ask. So yeah, if you can keep voting as well. And if you don't get through all the questions through the panel, we will have some more additional time at the end for a Q&A. And if we also miss out on your question, then feel free to email Danny and Amelia, and they'll follow up with you. And if there's any conversations that is not related to film festivals that you want to have, also feel free to email Danny and Amelia, and they will gladly respond to you, because we do want to keep the conversation going. So this is the fifth in a series of Screen New South Wales webinars called the Screen Connect series, which is to stay informed on upcoming webinars. You can sign up to the Screen New South Wales e-newsletter via the Screen New South Wales website, and also follow them on social media channels. And all these links should be up in the chat box. I think Danny and Amelia will put up the links to the socials and the e-newsletter link. So yeah, I can see there's I think 55 people in the chat. We have about 108 registered, so there might be more people coming, but yeah, I think we will get started. So yeah, as I said, I'm the outreach manager at the Australian Film and Television Radio School, also known as Afters. So I'm moderating this panel, and there's some really amazing people joining us today. So I'll just introduce them one at a time. First, I'd like to introduce Leigh Small. Leigh joined Sydney Film Festival as a CEO in 2010. She has worked for over 30 years in management positions in many of Sydney's performing arts companies, including Sydney Opera House, Sydney Theatre Company, and as the Executive Director of Sydney Dance Company for 10 years. There's a lot more on Leigh that you can read up on the link. So yeah, please welcome Leigh. I think this is how I bring Leigh into the...
You want me to start talking now?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to us on the screen. Gary and Camille and Janine, do you want me to start talking about the film festival now, Gary? I'm just wondered if you're going to introduce everybody.
I might introduce everyone else as well. Let me do that. So next we have Janine Collins. Janine diversifies income streams and builds private sector revenue through business partnerships, philanthropy, cultural tourism, and commercial activities. She has directly raised over $30 million and leveraged much more in education, human rights, and cultural sectors, transforming at-risk and startup organizations into sustainable enterprises, which is a very important thing, especially in the here and now. Janine is a board member of the leading arts companies, performance-based and urban theatre projects. So please welcome Janine.
Thank you.
And next, our third guest is Camille Latus. Camille is the co-founder and director of the Lebanese Film Festival. Camille is passionate about sharing stories of Lebanon, its people, culture, and the traditions to the Australian audiences, while contributing to the accessibility of the arts in Western Sydney by holding sessions in Bankstown and beyond. Camille is also an urban planner by day, so please welcome Camille.
Thank you.
Now, I think we should all be, there you go, that works, great. So I thought I'd start off by, Leigh, I think you were about to start the conversation. I thought I'll start off by, I guess, taking stock about what's happened so far with your individual practices and festivals. So, you know, where is Sydney Film Festival, Lebanese Film Festival, and festivals in general right now, and what have they done up to date as a response to COVID-19? Leigh, do you want to go first?
Thanks, Gary. It's probably a good place to start with a snapshot of Sydney Film Festival, because we've really been riding the wave of planning a festival, cancelling a festival, and then turning into a virtual festival. We, in February, had locked off about 50% of our program, and we started to build scenario plans of what would happen if COVID hit Sydney. I naively thought that it was scenario building to just put in a drawer and never see again. But we had the situation of, we knew through the scenarios that if venues were to only admit up to 500 people, Sydney Film Festival wouldn't survive. It would lose much too much money to be presented in small venues. So we rely on venues of 500 to 2,000, namely the State Theatre, Randwick Ritz, Cremorne, George Street Cinemas, Event Cinemas, to sell up to no less than 70% attendance. So when we knew that there was going to be social distancing and a lockdown of not having public events for 500 people, we needed to cancel the festival. We also, in the scenario planning, realised that we had to cancel by a certain point, because you then start to spend too much money. So our colleagues at the Writers' Festival had launched their festival, were about to go ahead, and then they had to cancel. So they lost a lot of money that was invested into marketing and staff. So we are in the fortunate position of 2 months out of the festival taking the decision to cancel the festival. So although we lost over 3.3 million in income, which was income from ticket sales and sponsorship, we also made savings of 2.8 million. So we were left with a deficit of about $500,000, and we had reserves to cover that. That would have put us in a very precarious situation for 2021. And certainly JobKeeper has kept us afloat this year, and we will be able to take risks next year. So within 2 days of cancelling the festival, the entire full-time staff were all working from home. And during that period, we started scenario building of what it was appropriate for Sydney Film Festival to do. So whilst our purpose is to show the best of the year's festival films to a Sydney audience, it's also to support Australian filmmakers. And our award series is part of the distinction of the Sydney Film Festival. So we spoke to our partners at Documentary Australia Foundation and Dendy Cinemas, and they wanted to go ahead with the Australian Documentary Foundation Award for Australian Documentary and with the Dendy Short Film Awards. So we thought one of the things that we should do is to present those two programs, and then with the European Female Film Promotion Agency, they also wanted for us to present the Emerging Female Director series that we have each year. And so with those 3 series, we decided to launch a virtual film festival. And I think, as you all know, it's very difficult because of being able to broadcast on a secure platform, but we managed to make a partnership with Shift 72, which I know some of you are also working with, and we launched just over a week ago. And just very briefly, an insight from where we're at now, we've already hit the target that we would have achieved for those programs in real cinemas. So we've already sold the same amount of tickets, and where we launch next week on Wednesday, and the festival goes for 12 days, which is a rewarding outcome. And just the one final thing about that is that the ticket buyers are buying what we're calling the Access All Festival Pass. So there's 20 features and 10 short films in our virtual edition, and we thought that people would pick and choose films to watch, but the majority of the sales are to people who want to come to the whole festival. So yeah, we're learning a lot.
I guess, is that your new version of, like, a multi-pass, like, 10 or 20 pass film kind of thing?
Yes, well, actually, one of the reasons is we use 2 services. Further, our ticket sales service, which we can do our FlexiPass in, and they're still the only ticket provider in Australia that can have a redeemable FlexiPass. And then so Shift couldn't do any of that. So we're selling on the Shift platform, and kind of annoyingly, you can only buy 1 ticket at a time. So you make a transaction, you buy 1 film, and it's called renting. So you have access to seeing that film over a 10-day period. If you wanted to buy 4 or 5 films, you'd have to go in and purchase a single ticket each time. So it was a bit of a last moment when I realized we couldn't do redeemable passes. And I said, okay, let's do a product which is the whole festival. And it's the most popular product. It's great.
Great. Before I ask Camille about Lebanese Film Festival, just a quick question, Leigh. Meg asked, are the ticket prices the same for the online festival as the...
No, they're slightly lower. We looked at the European model. So just before we decided to do a virtual festival, we were heartened by CPH Docs in Copenhagen. So they were 2 days out of their festival. They cancelled and moved completely onto online. So they're a great example where they were charging €6 a ticket. And they would normally sell about 113,000 attendances over their 10-day festival, and they sold over 100,000 tickets. So they had a very successful outcome. They reached a broader audience. So we took that as a model, and we thought, okay, well, an average price of $12 a ticket would be a good price. The other thing, it's got to be negotiated with the filmmakers and the distributors and sales agents, because as you all know, they're losing an enormous amount of revenue. It's not ideal to go onto a festival video on demand as your first premiere of the film, because that's at the end of the release chain and the least amount of income. So we did a renegotiation with the classification board to be able to premiere films video on demand, and that came up with you could open the premiere film for a limited number of days, but only sell a limited number of tickets, because these films will still try and premiere in cinemas and try and get broadcast sales, and then end up on video on demand. So we don't want to kill their video on demand business and possible sale.
Thanks, Leigh. Camille, you're on mute. Do you want to talk about the Lebanese Film Festival? Because it usually happens in the second half of the year, doesn't it?
Yeah, so the Lebanese Film Festival typically happens at the end of August each year. End of August, early September. Before then, we go to some regional towns in September, October. But for us, it's been really difficult to plan, just with the way things are unraveling, almost on a daily basis. Different things are opening up. We know theatres are opening up in July, but it's not clear what their capacity will be and what the social distancing requirements are. So we've made a decision that we will hold an online festival. It's really important for us as a smaller multicultural film festival to still have a presence this year. We don't want to fall off the festival radar. So yeah, importantly for us, we will have the online festival platform, and we're looking closely at what the South African Film Festival did, including the way they've done ticketing and allowed the flexi passes or the single film pass. And then balancing that with still having some kind of physical presence, because a big part of what we do is bringing audiences to Bankstown and showing film in Western Sydney. So that's still the geographic location of what we do is still very important. So we're almost, at the moment, we're keeping a really close eye on what is happening in the theatre space to kind of understand whether it's possible to still hold the physical screenings and what would that look like. And we're fortunate enough to have really good partnerships with 3 of the local venues, so we can, they've been really flexible with us, and we're able to. We're all on the same page. It's a dynamic and changing situation, but yeah, priority for us is to still maintain a presence this year, and I think other film festivals that are going online are seeing increases in audiences. So it's an opportunity really for us to validate some of our assumptions, to grow our audience, and potentially reach places that we haven't been able to reach with the physical screenings.
I imagine this is a dilemma for a lot of festivals that happen in the second half of the year, to wait and see if we will be able to return to cinemas and have more public events, or to go online.
Exactly, and we're kind of strong on maintaining we've kept the same time that we run the festival for the last 8-9 years. So we're keen to kind of keep that going in the virtual space. And then in terms of the physical screenings, that's a bit more of a wait and see approach.
And I imagine the audiences for Sydney Film Festival and Lebanese Film Festival do cross over, but there's also differences. I think, Camille, you were saying before that a lot of them like to turn up and buy tickets on the spot, and it's sort of like, so, have you, I guess that another reason why you want to keep it as a physical festival as opposed to online. Yeah,
exactly. I think a lot of our audiences do, a big part of film, and I think we all agree, a big part of the film festivals is going to the theatre and seeing things on the big screen. And as Leigh was saying, that's often the first, the introduction to a film before it moves on to other formats. And for our audience, with a lot of elderly, a lot of non-English speaking backgrounds, they do appreciate the simplicity of turning up at the cinema, being able to buy a ticket and watch the film. So I think navigating that virtual space with those audiences is going to be a bit of a challenge. But we're looking at things of having a hotline where people can call in and we can help them navigate that process, or buy the tickets for them and talk them through how to actually watch the films and stream them and all that kind of thing. So we might need a bit more of a support that's running once tickets are on sale.
Okay.
Yeah, just adding to that, Camille, one of the things that we've found, because you can't geo-block by state, so all our festival is going to all of Australia, we've been doing a national campaign. However, the sales are still mostly in Sydney and surrounding area. Some of our travelling film festival in regional Australia, those patrons are buying. But I was quite surprised, because I had assumed that other capital cities would be interested in the program, but it's quite hard to get their attention.
Oh, exactly. And I guess that they're probably tuned in to what's happening in their city, from previous years and all of that. So probably more in tune with what's happening in, say, Adelaide or Melbourne or wherever that might be. What would be interesting for us is whether we could reach some of the smaller Lebanese communities. We know there's a bit of a community in regional New South Wales that's scattered through a lot of smaller towns that we haven't been able to get to. And then Melbourne, they're the second largest Lebanese community. So it'd be interesting to see whether audiences pick up there.
Thanks, Camille. Janine, did you, I see differences between obviously a big festival like Sydney Film Festival and Lebanese Film Festival, and you work across the multiple organizations. Can you think of other examples of how festivals have adapted to this current time?
Yeah, sure. It's because what we're hearing is so many great examples of, I think now is the opportunity to really understand what your strengths are, what your core business is, why you even exist, and then identify all of those variables that can be changed around that we're hearing from Camille and Leigh. And we're seeing at the moment, it's those businesses with less fixed costs and more variables ride out the disruptions. You can see the large ones like ballet, opera, symphonies, much more difficult because of they don't have the variables like the film festivals have. And so now's a great opportunity. Everyone's focused on short-term needs, and long-term is really difficult to look at the moment. But to look at the next 12 months and do that review, I think everyone across the sector, all of the sectors, there's value in thinking about what the year looks like, but in particular what's non-negotiable in your business and why you exist, and how you're going to manage your teams, and where is the revenue going to come from, and who are your audiences going to be when you start this new world, in this new reality. And it's also a good time to have a think about what your models were like before COVID. Were they working? Was there cash flow? Were you getting a good personal return as well as cash return on your model? Because now's a fantastic time when you have disruption to review all of that. And one example I was thinking of was I'm on the board of Performance Space, and a few years ago we lost 40% of our income sort of overnight, and we had about 8 weeks notice to work out how to deal with it, and asked ourselves those questions. And and the core business was emerging artists, a platform for emerging artists, nurturing their work, and diversity. All of that non-negotiable. That's cool. Everything else could be reviewed, and we needed to diversify income. We had loyal audiences from 30 years. We needed new audiences, and it was inevitable. Sadly, a restructure was coming because of costs. So out of that was born the LiveWorks Experimental Arts Festival, and 3-4 years later, we've got an increased focus on queer, First Nations, and engagement with Asia Pacific, all building new audiences. We've got ticket, philanthropy, sponsorship, earned income, as well as government income. So you've diversified your income streams. There is that more variable staff structure set up, and up to 50,000 attendees, which is enormous compared to how the organisation used to run. But it needed a major disruption to make us move really quickly. And just asking those 4 or 5 questions were enough to go, okay, what's non-negotiable? Everything else is up for grabs. Let's look at movements. And I think maybe what's coming out of this is 3 alternatives models where people are going to try and put the old structure into a new reality. Might not work so well. Others that are going to tweak what they have, and others who are just going to try a whole new approach. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out over the next 12 months. Yeah.
Sounds good. And as someone who goes out to live events a lot, I've definitely noticed performance lands on my radar a lot more in the last couple of years. And I think it's a testament to what you were saying. So maybe let's look at sort of tweaking the current model or coming up with new models. Leigh, you spoke a little bit about, sorry, it escapes me, the platform that you're using, Something 72, or was it called?
Sorry, what was that?
The platform that you're using to screen.
The platform is a New Zealand startup company called Shift 72, and I think, Camille, you're using them as well with your
they're one of our options. Yeah.
So let's discuss the options that are available and why you ended up.
Look, one of the big issues is piracy, of course, and so video on demand is so easily pirated. So Shift 72 have a very secure platform. They also have high definition, so the quality is very good. So they're the existing platform internationally used by Cannes and some other film festivals for industry viewing. So that was a good option. We knew of them, and I think it was the proof of the success of CPH Docs in Copenhagen. We needed to move quickly. We needed we didn't want to be the canary in the tunnel and using a company that hadn't done this before. So that's how we made that decision.
Okay. Are you aware of any other platforms that you want to discuss? Or?
Not that it has a proven track record. So I think Shift 72 have moved in very quickly and they've taken up the market. I know Festival Scope tried to deliver that sort of festival and it crashed too much. So I'm not aware of other platforms that have worked. Of course, there's the We Are One Global International Film Festival that's currently screening on YouTube, and that's been quite successful. But they're all films that have gone through the process of being premiered, had theatrical release, they've had broadcast, so they don't have piracy or income stream issues. So that's, I don't know if other people in this forum today are looking at the We Are One International Film Festival, but it's quite successful. It's very easy to use, it's free, and it's a great mix of 20 international festivals providing 4 or 5 hours of viewing. It's terrific. That's not an income for anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only other platform we've come across is Vimeo's platform, which
yes,
which I think the South African Film Festival have used. So we're still working with a couple of teams to understand, pros and cons of, the Shift 72 and Vimeo, basically, the two options we're looking at. And then how they interface with things like ticketing and ease of streaming on TV and all that kind of thing.
Janine, are you aware of any other platforms?
No, I'm not.
Cool. So let's talk about ticketing structures, and Leigh, you touched on this a little bit about the whole idea of a festival pass versus individual. Have you seen any other ticketing structures that have been proven to be effective? I mean, Camille, I don't know if you know how successful the South African Film Festival was. Are you able to talk to that? Or? In
terms of ticketing, I'm not too sure. I think the interesting thing for us is how we measure the audience, because when you might be selling a ticket, but there could be 5-6 people in the lounge room watching a particular film. So I think measuring the audience is going to be a bit of a challenge for film festivals in the virtual space, and actually understanding whether you're increasing your audiences or not. So ticket sales in this case might not be a true reflection of your audience.
I think that's possibly why we've had so much pickup for Access All Festival, because it's friends or a couple or a group of people, a family who are going to watch the film. So they see it as very good value that a lot of people can watch at the same time. We did try to get Shift 72 to put postcode as a non-negotiable click-through when you're purchasing a ticket, but they couldn't make that development in time by the time we were on sale. So the only way we can really find out where our audience is coming from is through their IPN. So just looking at where it's coming from, which is inexact art, but it gives us some idea.
Yeah.
What broader opportunities do you see for festivals, I guess, who are moving online? Janine, do you want to speak on this? Or?
Well, I think audience reach is certainly the main one. I just mentioned to everyone earlier that Head On, a client of ours, moved online very quickly and have tripled their audience reach to 80,000, which is fantastic.
Is that the photography?
That's Head On Photo Festival. Yeah. They were scheduled, to run in May, and so went ahead with the festival, but with a new digital approach. So,
Janine, do you think there's any influence in that attendance because it's free? So do you think that's part of how that did triple?
Well, I'm imagining, though, it's access as well. I mean, it's easier to access online because it would be free regardless. So the main differentiator is the fact that it is online. Yeah.
And thinking about
opportunities for to really validate some of the assumptions on where our audience are coming from. Hopefully we can start, get things like postcodes and locations of audiences, and that way we might reconsider what cities we're traveling to every year, because we do about 8 cities after the core Sydney festival. So there's a real opportunity for us to really understand what is the audience in Melbourne and Brisbane and some of the regional towns, and maybe shift some of our attention and investment on other cities. I think that's the real opportunity with going online. And normally we can only get, we'll be lucky to get, say, 10% of our audience responding to surveys, and that's on a good year. I think with the online festival and people having to register, there's an opportunity to capture data that we can then take away and use for 2021.
How about partnerships? Because I know, Leigh, you mentioned this about some of your audiences. Most of them are still Sydney and sort of broader New South Wales based, but some of them are coming across the state, and there's no stage geo-blocking. So how about partnerships with other festivals, and kind of, is this an opportunity for us to try new things in that way?
Look, I think the opportunity for broadcasting to all of Australia is really to do with the audiences rather than the partnerships. There are interesting crossovers in audiences, perhaps, with Melbourne International Film Festival and Sydney Film Festival, because both of our audiences can see both selection. But I think it's more to do with audiences than the actual festivals. I think this forum is probably one of the best ideas for partnership, is learning what works and what doesn't, because we've taken an attitude that we will keep building scenarios and keep trying new things. And the decision where we've turned right rather than left, we keep scenario building on the left because it may have actually been the right choice. So we're not assuming that we're making the right choices, and we will do things that fail. And we've been, again, as Janine said, if you're very clear what the purpose of the company is. So Sydney Film Festival has a very clear purpose, which is it's a public-facing film festival to show the best of national and international films of that year to as broader audience as possible, and to support filmmakers. So I really see them as three pillars, and everything we do has to serve one of those pillars. Recently, we worked on creating our value statements as well, because we take for granted what a 67-year-old organisation means to the public and means to the people who have been part of it, the filmmakers, the audiences, the people who work there. So we articulated what our values were. And in the current climate of decline in media, lack of trust in government, now isolation through borders being closed, the film festival's values of telling stories from other places and other opinions is critical to what we do. So everything that we're doing at the moment, what we're doing with our virtual film festival, what we would plan to do next year, has an element of trust from our board that we will try things and fail. So I think, back to your point about partnerships, this forum, I think, is absolutely critical that we start sharing a lot more information than we would in real time and real space, because we have little access to each other. So I think one of the most important partnerships is partnership of communication and access to each other, access to knowledge of failure and knowledge of success. So I'm probably putting a lot of responsibility back on the shoulders of Screen Australia. A bit like Paris when he set up the International Festival, Film Festival Association. I think, I hate the term going forward, but in the future, I think that there needs to be formal and regular communication. I've become a bit of a fan of Zoom, because I feel there's a democratic communication, there's a way of finding things out that you don't in real time, and you don't over an email or a telephone. So that excites me. Partnership of information.
Great. That's good to hear, especially after you come from a very long Zoom meeting. So you're still a fan. Janine, are you aware of any partnerships and sort of collaborations going on at the moment?
No, I mean, one's explored often, but also stumbling blocks. We look at how we can share income coming into sectors, and it's a really interesting space of wanting to share as much as possible, yet it's a competitive environment as well. And, we were tossing around ideas about, was it possible to look at sharing sponsorship across sectors, whole sectors? But, you know, as we've discussed, everyone has their own particular niche as well that attracts partnerships. And so that's certainly to be valued, and that's in response to what businesses want. And I think with philanthropy, everybody has their own loyal donor base as well. And philanthropists will work across lots of different organisations, but you always want to work hard at building your personal relationship and your organisation's relationship with individuals. So, you know, I think it's interesting because the willingness is there, but it doesn't always work in practice, in that space anyway, in building income. Certainly sharing resources, I think there's got to be some kind of efficiencies that can be found there. I mean, theatre's always had the beer economy, that's old. There are, when you have spaces like Carriageworks, there's opportunities for that type of thing if you're working in hubs. But I imagine there'll be more discussion around that in the future as well.
And I think for the many multicultural film festivals, I know there's a lot I can see from the chat. It might be a little bit easier to share resources because our audiences are quite different. We're probably geographically different in terms of what parts of Sydney we're screening in. But yeah, definitely, I think talking to Leigh's point, there's definitely a need, I think, to share ideas a lot more and share what's working, what isn't working. But then there's probably an opportunity for the multicultural film festivals to take that a bit further and share platforms and resources when we're setting up our virtual festivals and all that kind of thing, because they are big costs for smaller festivals. And we're fortunate we've been able to build some reserves to invest in that kind of online platforms, but I know they are quite expensive and maybe out of reach for some of the festivals. So we're very keen and open to working with other multicultural film festivals that that might want to partner in that space. I think we've lost Gary there.
I was about to say.
I was just going to add, another space where great partnerships do occur too is, I think, between the independents and the major organisations sometimes. That's outside the film festival space, of course, where that gives the independents opportunity to access much larger audiences if they're working in collaboration with the major organisations.
Yeah.
Is our moderator on his way back?
The New South Wales logo.
I'm sure we could talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
Maybe my image has disappeared. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We're missing you. Yeah.
While I try to figure out how to bring, I know why. It's because I was worried that I was going to get a Zoom call, so I quit Zoom, and then my video just disappeared. So I wanted to ask you about accessibility. Also, I mean, Camille, to your point about some of your audiences are older or non-English speaking, so accessing content online isn't always easy. But also to the other point about you saying, there are Lebanese communities living in regional rural areas, and they will now be able to access the festival in a way that they weren't able to before. So looking at the positive and negatives in terms of accessibility with an online festival. So maybe do you want to start, Camille, and then we can.
Yeah, I think we get messages on a yearly basis saying, there's a big community in Tamworth, or there's a big community in XYZ regional towns that would love to see your content. But when we do the numbers and the cost of delivering that, we have to make a decision that it just doesn't stack up. And often we don't have the local. We rely a lot on local partnerships and things. So when we go to Newcastle, for example, we work with the Hunter Film Society. When we go to Adelaide, we work with an Arabic language organisation there. So those local partnerships are really important. But I think now there's an opportunity really to reach those smaller communities that have consistently asked for us to screen in their cities or towns, and just see what the audience is like there. Is there a critical mass where we can actually make it stack up? and hopefully maybe build some connections that allow us to go there physically in the next few years. But yeah, I think it's more of a let's see what information we can get from this year, and then analyse that after the festival and see what we can take out of that for 2021 and beyond.
I mean, Camille, you are right. It's very expensive to take film festivals to regional Australia, and we've had fantastic support from Screen New South Wales to do that. And we go to and Queensland, Northern Territory and New South Wales. One of the things that we came across in a forum to do with the Independent Cinema Association was there are regional cinemas that through COVID stayed open to sell lollies and chocolates, etc., because they're as a cinema, they're a point of community contact in their regional town, and so trying to still have a presence, even though they didn't have any films, they were keeping their doors open. We also know with the Travelling Film Festival that we're sometimes the largest attendance that cinema will have over a weekend in any year. So it very much is it's a physical shared experience cinema. So it's I think it's great that we're taking these programs all across Australia, but I think that the physical film festival is really important to regional Australia. Yeah,
definitely. And yeah, hopefully now there's an opportunity to really see what can be viable, and work out. We've made the assumption that it's probably too expensive to go to all these places, but we just don't have the data to back up how many people are there and what the audience might be like. And hopefully, if we can capture some of that through the online platform this year, we can hopefully have a better presence to those communities.
Janine, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I think Leigh and Camille have covered it all really well.
Great. Now, in terms of threats, looking broadly at the threats that have for festivals, I think there was a question in there also about how do you negotiate premieres and fees for films. Janine, how have you? Leigh, how have you handled this?
Well, film festivals back in the day didn't pay a fee for a premiere film. So I think it was about 16 or 18 years ago, there was a percentage of box office that went to distributors or sales agents. And so that's set at a particular amount. With video on demand, I think the split percentage is 75, whereas for a film festival, you're paying about 25%. And so for video on demand, it's got to sit around somewhere around 50%. So the income that goes back to the film festival is a lot less. So you need to sell a lot more tickets, but it's certainly as a net profit to what we can earn out of box office, it's simply not enough to do virtual film festivals. So for us as a festival and also for the distributors and the filmmakers, they simply cannot survive on video on demand. So the sooner the cinemas return, the better for everybody, because I think there are a lot of people going out of business if they don't.
Sure. Just to say, I've tried to come back on the video. It's not going to happen. So you'll just have to listen to my voice instead. Janine,
just back to Leigh's point, the other thing, about the importance of the cinemas is, a lot of what we offer is not just the film experience, but experiencing Lebanese hospitality, the food, the beer, the wine, kind of thing. So without having the physical screenings, we lose a lot of what makes the Lebanese Film Festival a unique event as well. It really is critical to get back in the cinemas and be able to host those kind of events to expose people to Lebanese culture more broadly. And I'm sure that's the same for many of the multicultural film festivals.
Janine, do you want to talk about creative partnerships?
Sure. I'll talk about that in the context of diversifying funding, because one of the areas that I think, festivals are fairly comfortable in the sponsorship zone, but often the film festivals overlook philanthropy as a source of income. And I've discovered that through working with people like Antenna Film Festival, where we did a whole organisational review. And realised that philanthropy was an untapped revenue income stream for them. So one approach to that was to apply to Creative Partnerships Australia. Every year they have a grant, if you like, system called Plus One. And you can, for small to mediums, you can apply to get up to $25,000 of philanthropy matched by Creative Partnerships Australia. And if you're a larger organisation, it's $50,000. Hello, you're back. And there's also for independents up to $5,000 through another matched program. And this is fantastic because Antenna used this program to really launch philanthropy, and as a result raised $25,000. It was matched by Creative Partnerships, so that's $50,000 of income earned, which could then be invested into employing a development manager to keep that momentum going. They got 100 new donors in the process, and to quote David, broke the cycle, because you're able to look ahead now in terms of your revenue, not always trying to catch up as the festivals are developing. And we use the same model with Sydney Fringe Festival. Again, an organisational review. They applied for Plus One. They also used a different strategy, which was to focus on getting larger gifts of about $5,000. They successfully got 32 new high-end donors on, and as well as a lot of grassroots, lower level support, you know. So again, they're on their way, and they use those funds to employ a partnerships manager. So
yeah.
with that,
then we started that way as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how philanthropy started at Sydney Film Festival, through a Creative Partnership Plus One grant. And I've done that. I've used it with 2 other organisations. It's a big organisation. Their training is fantastic. They've got so much resource and knowledge. So it's really fantastic.
Yes, yeah. And they've got online video resources too, you know, if people are interested in learning more. So it's all free and all knowledge there to be accessed. Yep.
Janine, do you have some advice on how to, in these times, kind of maintain an ongoing financial relationship with your partners and philanthropists, but at the same time be sensitive to their own needs and you know, like their ability to contribute? Yeah.
Was that me? Did you?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think, you know, business partnerships and individual philanthropists are 2 totally different propositions, of course. Business at the moment, from what I'm gathering, a lot of partners are supporting organisations and remaining loyal. However, they've been disrupted as well. So I would be conversations. It's important to keep speaking to them so that when things are more settled in 12 to 18 months, we know what business is looking for. It will be different. So let's be prepared for it. With the individual philanthropy, I haven't seen, there's a lot of annual appeals out at the moment, and they all seem to be good news stories. They won't finish until June 30, but everything is on track. Some organisations have picked up additional support through their campaigns, a lot of new donors. I think film festivals in particular have a lot of stuck-on subscribers and ticket buyers, and it is a great time to let them know what you need to be able to continue to be a great festival. There is no harm in asking, and I think while there's such a digital focus at the moment, it can be done in a cost-effective way, and it'd be interesting to see what the results are for organisations. I'd be encouraging them to dip into this new space if they haven't done it before at the moment.
Leigh, how have you put this into practice, I guess, with SFF and maintaining relationship with your sponsors and partners?
Look, with our sponsors, we felt without a physical festival, we didn't have cause for a partnership, financial relationship, but we have ongoing conversations and a relationship. It's not transactional, which has been a new territory, and it's very interesting. It's great. With our donors, as Janine said, everybody's circumstances are different. So some we didn't assume that everybody would be able to support the festival this year. So we've budgeted for a downturn in philanthropy this year. It's with our donors, we've been quite successful in raising high net donations, largely through our board being very much a give money and get money board. They've been fantastic. So we've got a lot of individual relationships at the high end. And over the last 2 years, it's been about educating people who buy a ticket, no matter how much money you can donate, it all makes a difference to us. So we've just launched this week a campaign about that if you want these organisations such as your multicultural film festivals, performance space, etc., Sydney Film Festival, if you want these organisations to be your cultural homes in the future, individually you have to support them. So it doesn't matter how much or how little or how much that you can give. Giving something makes a big difference. And perhaps it's a good time to talk about the Red Line example. Yeah, so I'm the chair of a performing arts company, Red Line, at the Old Fitz, which has been going for 5 years, and they've never received any government funding. So they have 60 seats in the Old Fitz pub in Woolloomooloo, and they support emerging performers and actors. So they produce a lot of independent theatre. They're probably the largest independent theatre producer in Sydney. And every year they survive on philanthropy. So they have 2 people who run the company, and they either run a fundraising event or they ask for money. And it's been a real lesson to me that people want to give if they're asked. So it's really being very proactive. So they built themselves to a point where they presented Betty Blockbuster in the Sydney Festival, which was punching way above their weight. And then straight after that, COVID happened. So they shut down their theatre company in a pub. So it doesn't exist anymore. They cancelled all their productions. But within 2 weeks, they decided that they would do a play reading online. So they did it before other people did. And Andrew Henry's idea was that their theatre company started in a small pub in Woolloomooloo with an American play 4 years ago, and it had been on in Broadway with Alec Baldwin in it. So they approached the playwright and said, look, we want to read your play online, we want it to be free, and we'd like Alec Baldwin to be in it. So he was introduced. They did this play reading called The Orphans. So 2 Australian actors and Alec Baldwin, and the way they promoted it, which I thought was fantastic, they didn't say that they were fundraising. They weren't asking for money for survival. They were inventing a new model. So they put it out, and Alec Baldwin put it out saying, please buy a ticket to this free live reading. And it was on YouTube. The sound was good. The vision was appalling. It was really terrible. However, they said, please, donate whatever you can, or if you can't, if you're having a tough time, come, just get dressed up, sit in front of your television and hear a live reading. So that first live reading earned $54,000 for them. And so it's now become a new business model for them. So it's not fundraising. They actually invented a pay what you can. It's like, throw money in the bucket. And it's been a really, really successful model for them. They've done one other play where they had Rose Byrne do the reading. They'll do another play soon. But it's I was very impressed that there is a very fine line between fundraising and also a new business model. So things that you want to try, think twice about whether it's actually asking for a donation or it's asking people to participate in something that's a product.
Yeah, that's a great example. If there's any other examples to the audience, please feel free to write it up in the chat or post a link. Camille, I wanted to ask you, how's your relationship with your sponsors and philanthropists, and have you been in touch with them, talking about what might be coming up in August and so on?
Yeah, so we've been in touch now with most of our sponsors and partners. But we've taken the approach that, we recognise, as Leigh was saying, some people might not be in a position to support this year financially, but we're keen to maintain those relationships, particularly those that have been around, for 5, 6, 7 years. So we're taking a flexible approach and allowing people to either support this year or take a 2-year approach and stagger their financial commitment for 2020 and 2021. And then we've also looked at other opportunities, like we do have a merchandise partner, for example, and last year we started actually retailing that merchandise, which became a new income stream. So we'll be looking at how we can actually grow some of that. And thankfully we started testing that physically last year, and there was some demand to start selling things throughout the year and online. So we'll look at what we can do this year to make that a new income stream. And I think some of the ideas from Leigh and Janine on philanthropy and actually reaching out to our audiences, which we haven't done before, would be something that we need to look at moving forward. But otherwise, I think, thankfully, because we are in Bankstown and there isn't other major film festivals there, we've been able to draw a really good local base of sponsors, from venues to printers and all that kind of thing. So, with that support base, hopefully we'll be able to kickstart again easily in 2021, but also keep them engaged through this year and whatever we end up doing. And we are considering things like still offering ads in the virtual film space, so maybe showing 1 or 2 ads prior to a film. That way people are still getting some value for their money if they do choose to financially support this year.
And could I just add, I mean, it's something that is quite obvious, but often gets dropped behind when everybody's under pressure. And it is the importance of just that ongoing communication and transparency, because with that, you actually develop loyalty and then you develop trust. And when you've got trust, then people are really happy to give, and they want to give because they want to make a difference. But you sort of have to earn that. And the way to earn that is just to continually update and be open and honest, I think, with what's happening with your organisation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're at the 11 o'clock mark, so we should move on to Q&A, even though we have plenty of questions that we've written up before. So I'll just get started on some of the questions from the audiences, and then if we address all of them, I'll return to the questions that I have. The first question is for the whole panel. What are your 3 best tips for developing audiences at your festival? It's a very broad question, but it's got a lot of votes, so I thought I should ask you.
Here you go, Leigh.
First tip, a great film.
Yeah.
That's I think, and that's, I don't actually say that in jest. A great film will bring an audience, so that's the first thing. And then having really, really up-to-date social and online marketing capacity, because you can have a whole audience for a film and lose them because you don't know how to reach them. So I think it's getting harder and harder, but I think that yeah, I would just have those 2 tips. It's 1, having a great film, and then 2, knowing how to get to the audience because they're there.
Janine and Camille, do you have anything to add?
I think I agree with those 2 tips. The one I would add is the experience around the film festival. So I think for multicultural film festivals, people are going there for the film, and they obviously have an interest in that culture and what it presents. So we do a big opening night with the food and the wine and all of that as part of it. So a real kind of cocktail event. And for the closing weekend, we've got the pop-up bar in Bankstown. So for us, drawing people from, a big part of our audience is from the inner city or other parts of Sydney. So actually getting them to come to Bankstown is challenge number 1. And then to watch a Lebanese film is challenge number 2. So that experience for us is really one of the big selling points, and something that helps us build the audience, because they want to come back for that experience in addition to the great film.
And I think I'd agree, a quality product experience and strategic partnerships. So when we're looking at queer programming, we partner with Mardi Gras. That is a whole new audience, but broader audience. Urban theatre projects. I'm on the, out at Bankstown, partnering with Sydney Festival has brought a lot of new audiences out to Western Sydney. So those kind of strategic partnerships, I think, when you're especially with a smaller org, with somebody larger, if you've got diverse programming, you can have a lot of diverse partnerships in that sense, and it's a pretty effective way to grow new audiences.
I have another question from Kyle Goldfinch. Hi, Kyle. And this is a question, one of the reasons I get really excited about the Sydney Film Festival every year is the films, but also the Q&As that happen and the live interactions that you're able to have. And so to you, Leigh, and also to the rest of the panel, how do you, incorporate Q&As now into this new model of showing screen content?
Look, we found that we repurposed part of our marketing team and our guests and industry team into a content production team. So we have worked with all of the filmmakers for all 33 films to do an elevator pitch. So they've all filmed it in their own homes, but they're all filmmakers, so they're all brilliant. So they've done a 30-second pitch on why you should watch their film. Then they've done a few-minute introduction before you watch the film. And then afterwards, we've had anyone from Nishen and Jenny and Sandy George and ABC presenters doing a 15-minute Q&A after the film. So when you buy the film, you're buying a package with a lot of bonus content, which we've got very excited about, because we always we struggle to bring as many filmmakers as we would like to the film festival. So it might be 180 or so filmmaker guests. But this way, every film you watch, you're going to hear Q&As, you're going to meet the filmmaker. We're going to do 3 or 4 live panel events, which people can go on and then ask questions afterwards. But in a way, we can bring the filmmaker closer to their audience on a virtual film festival. And I think some of this will stay with us for the real film festival, because when I said there's 3 pillars of purpose for the festival, it's about opening up possibilities for filmmakers. And you cannot replace the experience of having a filmmaker at a film festival, seeing your audience watch their film and then talking afterwards, and then meeting other filmmakers who are going through the same experience. So that shared experience between audience and filmmakers is, I would say, the golden spot of what Sydney Film Festival is all about. And if you look at it over the years, over 67 years, it's always been that. So that's a very precious thing to us.
From our perspective, we often can only get one filmmaker a year from internationally. But I think now there's an opportunity for us to set up panels with more filmmakers from Lebanon, so that people can hear from them directly, and using platforms as simple as Facebook Live and Zoom to make it as accessible as possible. It's something that we hadn't thought about before. It's only something that's come into our thinking now that we are looking virtually. So I think that's a real opportunity to connect, with the filmmakers and bring them closer to the audiences.
Janine, any thoughts on this?
No.
Another question is, and maybe you can answer this, Janine, is what professional people do you need to help you move a festival online?
Wow. I'd say techie would be sort of right up front. It's interesting because, again, at Peace Space, because we have the festival's going to open in November, and have been looking at all of the various scenarios. And, you do start to do a bit of a skills assessment internally, great curatorial skills or production skills, that type of thing. But really, there are learnings to be made in this digital space if you're going, because suddenly we're moving really quickly, and what was always sitting there on the to-do list we're suddenly doing. So I think it's interesting, Leigh, you know, the organisations you're partnering with that have expertise in this area, and as you say, that have done that with the South African Film Festival as well. So, but I wonder, I mean, are there many organisations who have a proven track record around? I'd be asking Leigh.
Yeah, Leigh, so the Shift 70 should come with the technical expertise, I imagine, so you don't have to expand your staff or your contractors to try to work with them.
You do, because you have to integrate. So we, when we launched a week ago, to get Shift 72 as a platform on the back end of our website was trial and error. So we have our web company, Ed, who built our current website, who are absolutely brilliant, and they do a lot of commercial work as well. They were pretty much working around the clock. The morning we launched, my marketing manager rang me at 8 o'clock, really excited. He said, "We've only got 15 bugs left on the website." And because we'd all spent like days and days and days getting Shift 72 site clean and operative. And then we were then sticking it on to the back of the web. So you actually, in marketing, in your web providers, in your ticketing staff, you need a lot of people checking and checking and checking. So Shift 72 still probably, I would say there's 40% of development they need to do on their platform for it to be really useful. Same as FIRF, which has been our ticketing system. I've spent 10 years with them, and every year we start with a list of what we want to be developed so that we can get CRM working. It's a big part of our business. It's time consuming and it's expensive. So I think for the multicultural film festivals, this is where, I mean, you need to ring me up and say, what can you share with us, or who can you introduce us to, or what have you developed that we can kind of use off the shelf. So, you know, I think companies that do it really well, such as the Sydney Opera House, we now have this experience. Just, you know, people like to help. So just make sure you've got a very clear question of what you want help with. Know that you're going to have to raise some money through philanthropy to make it work. And I will actually give a plug for the City of Sydney. They very quickly set up micro grants as soon as COVID happened, and I think it was 2 million worth, and it was up to 20,000 that you could apply for as an organisation. And one of the things you were applying for was shifting your business to a virtual reality or making it COVID proof for the future. So our work that we did with Shift 72 was funded by the City of Sydney micro grant. So I'm sure there will be many more of those federal, state and local council grants for making yourself future-proof. And this is a very specific one for all of your film festivals. You actually, the great possible thing is that you can go online. You're a business that can make a shift to being online. It's not ideal, but it's something you can do. So it's expensive, time consuming, and look for money to help you.
Yeah. Camille, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I think we're probably learning a lot from Leigh's comments because we're in the process of setting all these things up. So, you know, that trial and error, and I think making sure that we integrate, you know, as easy as possible. That's going to be the challenge for us, and we're working through that now. So,
and look, Camille, I think it sounds like it makes us be a bit like a cartel, but where we can use the same providers, we all benefit, because, as I say, we're a canary in the tunnel. We've forced Shift 72 to do some development work. The next client of Shift 72 are going to benefit out of that. They're not going to pay for development. It'll be there. So, again, sharing the same providers as much as possible. And I will give a plug for Ed, web providers. They've done so much development for the festival.
Fantastic. Yeah,
great. That makes sense in terms of sharing resources between bigger festivals such as SFF and then the smaller sort of culturally diverse or niche market festivals. There was another question which I think, Leigh, you talked about, which is what ticketing platforms are using in conjunction with Shift 72, which is FERV is what you're using.
Yeah, but they should actually, we're not using FERV for our virtual festival because Shift as a platform is a payment platform. So the other thing is that when they did CPH Docs in Copenhagen, they didn't stick it on the back of a platform. You went straight to the Shift platform. So they have a virtual film festival platform. So if you're a festival without a sophisticated website, part of their service is they are the website. So they're the portal to buy the films and to market the films.
But you went with FERV because...
Well, no, FERV is who we have in existence. So for our real festival, we use the FERV system, but for a virtual festival, the sales are through Shift 72. So it's a one whole package.
Okay. There's another question which we kind of touched on, but maybe we can, from Morgan and Enda, around accessibility for low socioeconomic audiences and people who don't have access to the internet. Whether any of you have had conversations about how to support these audiences?
Not specifically. We've again, we have part of our film festival is the Screenability program through Screen New South Wales. So that's about accessibility to films online, but access to internet and smart TVs and technology to watch film festivals. We haven't specifically done anything. My first thought would be libraries would be the best place to support that because you've got access to technologies and thereby access to the film festival through libraries.
I think that's a point that highlights the importance of the physical events as well. So with some of our short films, through our partnerships with Canterbury Bankstown Council and the AFTRS or AFTRS, we're able to show those films for free, which provides that forum for people to engage with the festival. If they can't buy a festival ticket for whatever reason. So I think going back into those physical spaces and being able to put on those free events as well is really important.
Another question from Enda from the Irish Film Festival saying, are any universities partnering with film festivals to support their tech development?
We're in partnership with in any 1 year from 2 to 4 universities, but we've been making a deeper relationship with UTS. So there are things to do with CRM and AI for programming that we want to work with UTS Engineering, but it's working with universities takes quite a lot of time and a lot of build-up of relationship with the academic staff and the marketing staff. So they're long-term goals, but they're not short-term access.
What I'm loving about these great questions too is they have me thinking, don't they? They're bringing up more and more challenges and have we thought about this or this? And once they're discussed in these forums, someone will pick that up and work through it. It'll be interesting to regroup in 6 months and the conversation could have, progressed in a lot of these areas. It's quite exciting, really.
Well, look, when we first talked about this panel, we hadn't gone on sale with the virtual film festival. So I, at that point, didn't know if anybody was going to buy it. So it's very interesting. And it's great to hear about the results of the South African Film Festival and others. So there's a lot of cause to try these virtual festivals.
Leigh, are you running sort of pre-roll like advertising at the beginning of a screening and so on?
No, I just with this virtual edition, we decided that we wanted to invest in it ourselves. So we're very fortunate that we have continued core funding from state, local, and federal government. So the board backed us to present the festival, but it was really the first reason to do it was to support filmmakers and to present the awards. So we trialed an idea of spending no money on advertising. So we've done some social campaigns, but other than that, we've kept the costs quite low. So again, we haven't, we're not selling any advertising on the pre-rolls, because that's also where we want to put the filmmakers. So if you start selling advertising, plus you've got the intro and then the Q&A afterwards, it's sort of quite a lot of clutter around the film, which isn't usual on the VOD platform. But having said that, we do have a partnership with SBS, and they're programming 10 years of films that Nishen and Jenny have chosen as an on-demand SBS Sydney Film Festival backlog portal, and they would be selling advertising. So they are in that world, but in our festival we're not.
And Camille, is advertising a normal part of Lebanese Film Festival in the UK?
Yeah, so we do offer advertising space, in our usual screenings. It's something that we're open to this year, not something that anybody's insisted on, but something that we're open to if we need to maintain certain relationships. But there's nothing kind of committed to at this stage.
Yeah, and look, I will admit, we only show ads that are by our partners, so our sponsors and corporate partners. And we did, when, as Janine says, you forever have to look at growing new revenue streams. So Melbourne, I think, sells something like 14 minutes worth of ads before their screening. So we thought, okay, let's try selling ads. And last year was the first year that we went into the market quite aggressively, and we were 100% completely unsuccessul.
Yeah.
It didn't work. I don't know why. We could have been shit at it. I don't know, but we tried again this year, and we were only really getting any interest from known partners, people that we already knew. And also, even though we have vastly bigger audience, advertising sales in cinemas is so cheap. It's just, it wasn't a successful new revenue stream, and it wasn't going to be very big. So we took it as, we tried that and we failed miserably.
It'd be interesting to keep those conversations with business, because advertising revenue is dropping across the board, for media and everybody. It's really plummeted. What kind of content they do want to create, and are the festivals a good trial run for a lot of organisations, as they're shifting into new models themselves and testing new ideas?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, Janine, because I guess the unique selling proposition to advertisers is that a festival that's usually localized is going national in a way, right?
Yeah.
Not. So this is a good way to sell, and kind of, what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. It's the potential for global audiences. So it is about being able to present to business, here are the opportunities. We're trialing something together. Do you want to come with us? So it's not about the old model of, this is our demographics, this is how much we have. It's about, let's try a few new things together. And that perhaps don't involve a cash investment up front, because that's going to be a tricky space for the next 12 months. So if it's just beginning to work together in sharing expertise, but not using cash, then in 18 months, you're well placed to actually go, all right, let's tie this into a commercial proposition, because we know it's going to give you a return on investment, which is what they're after.
Yeah. Our issue there is a lot of our sponsors and partners are very local or based, bar maybe 2 or 3 that are national. So a lot of them actually aren't interested in having that national exposure. So a lot of them will actually tell us to switch off their ads when we go to Melbourne or Adelaide or Brisbane. They're just not interested. So that's whilst we're going national and potentially increasing exposure, it's just not where a lot of our partners want to be.
Does it provide you with scope, though, to look at national companies who are interested in the diversity is one of their value, their staff are interested in?
There's probably some leverage there in terms of, local businesses that maybe have a product that they want to get out there nationally and that kind of thing. But I think more so a lot of our partners are focused on their assets in Bankstown, for example, or their venue or their business, at most at a Greater Sydney level. But it's something that we'll have to look at, I guess.
All right, well, we've got just a few minutes left, so I'm going to propose the last question to the panel, sort of like a hypothetical, broad kind of question, because we're talking about film festivals, but if we talk about films and films that are going into production, many of them are on hold. So I guess Leigh, Camille, Janine, have you thought about, in terms of what's in the pipeline and what's about to come out in 2021, there might be a lot of films that are actually not completed in time or never kind of go into production, and what that means for you in terms of the content that you access and the pipeline, and whether you think, in 2021, you'll have enough content.
Well, look, as I said, we had 50% of our program accepted by the time we cancelled in March, 18th of March. And over the period of months after that, Nishen Moodley and Jenny Neighbour continue to check in with the distributors and sales agents about those films, what are their plans, and many are simply holding over to 2021. So there will be an amount of product that will simply be bubble wrapped this year and then start their release campaign after. But then Nishen Moodley also says that with the cinemas and the distributors, if cinemas open in July and everything is based on the success of Tenet, the Chris Nolan film that's the big blockbuster that's coming out in July, we were talking this morning that New Zealand are going to open their cinemas and theatres with no social distancing sometime soon. So if we popped our head up in end of August or September and people were back in cinemas, then there may be an amount of product that will release later in the year, even though they haven't gone through a film festival. But at the moment, we believe a lot of foreign films will come out next year.
We're in a bit of a tricky scenario with the current state of Lebanon. So they've had a pretty bad economic and political crisis since about October last year. So we've seen even our content for this year drop off, and that will probably have an impact on next year as well, because that crisis is still going. There's rampant inflation and all that kind of thing, which will impact on the industry. So it's something that, working with a country like Lebanon and that kind of national cinema, there's definitely been ups and downs. There's years where the program has 35 films and other films where there's 10 to 15 films at most. So I think it's something that we just have to work with and see how we go. And it might mean maybe there's some bigger international films next year that weren't necessarily funded from Lebanon that we're able to get more leverage out of. But it's something that, in our space, and I think for a lot of other multicultural film festivals in that space, that we're grappling with year on year. This is just another factor that might reduce the programming content.
Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up? Anyone?
I think just to say it'd be great to keep talking and working together, sharing ideas and information and maybe resources as well.
And I would say probably the best thing you can take out of this meeting today is to go and ring creative partnerships now.
Yes, they're busy on the side there. It's thanks for the opportunity. It's I just think it's moving so quickly. It's really exciting. It's great to see how responsive everybody is, and looking at the opportunities that will just keep coming up. I mean, this change is going to go on for some time yet. So I think the arts, we're so clever, the way that we can just go with the flow in this way. It's fantastic.
I think so. I think we're very resilient and innovative,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you to you, Gary.
Oh, no problem.
Thanks, Gary. And Amelia and Danielle. Yes.
Exactly. Thanks for screening stuff well. Thanks, Leigh. Thanks, Camille. Thanks, Janine. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.